Voice is audible. Hello. Is response okay? All right. So in yesterday's class, so we will continue. Only two applications are conjugation. One is regards one orientation or orienting of this methyl group when it is present. How this is dominating over another isopropyl group or tertiary butyl group. We will try to see. Okay. So let's start. And we will explain bond length part. Yes, definitely. Right, 1 second. Is my voice still breaking now for you? Is it okay now? I'm in campus actually. Probably I have connected to the network, Floats network. It might be a little bit slow. It is okay now. It's fine and good. Okay, let me start. Before we go into applications part again, let me just quickly revise this hyperconjugation part. So and after that we will see. Do we have exam? No, we don't have exam this week. Okay, board and all, it's fine, right? 1 second. Okay. So in yesterday's class, we have started hyperconjugation, and the only condition for any compound to show hyperconjugation will be presence of alpha hydrogens. If these alpha hydrogens are present, okay, I'll try to avoid that part. Body is blurred. How about now? 1 second, 1 second. I will use. Is it still here or we can work this out? Mm, bandwidth. Yeah, this 1 sec, 1 sec. Still blurred. Give me 1 second. Sorry. Yeah, bandwidth is actually too low, ma. So we will do whiteboard. I'll try to share the notes again. At least my voice is clear to you, right? Hello. Okay, then fine. We can work this out. Chalo. Let's start without any. It's been already 13 minutes. Okay. So in the last class, when we were talking about hyperconjugation, the only condition that we were looking for is alpha hydrogens. Alpha hydrogens are nothing but if you have any unsaturated system, carbon-carbon double bond or carbon-carbon oxygen, or any like any triple bond or carbocation or carbon-free radical or carbanion. With respect to these systems, okay, if any alkyl group is attached, any R group, that too having hydrogens on it. If there are no hydrogens, then there is no point of talking hyperconjugation. So if you take a very simple example, carbon carbon double bond CH, and you have CH3. This is simple propene molecule CH2. Now as you can see, this is the unsaturated system that we are talking about, and this will be our alpha carbon. Why? Because the carbon adjacent to any functional group or any important substituent, something like that, we treat that carbon as alpha. If there is another carbon, it will be beta, and if the third adjacent will be gamma. These are all we know. So for this hyperconjugation to take its effect, there should be at least one alpha hydrogen. So if there are alpha hydrogens, what will happen? There will be delocalization of these pi electrons into the empty orbitals, or the sigma to pi bond delocalization will happen. Mm. Today, after hyperconjugation, we will start aromaticity. It will be very simple. Only Huckel's rule, if you know the Huckel's rule and another 4 and pi, aromaticity, anti-aromaticity will start after hyperconjugation. And after that, we will see the trends. And once we see the trends, it will be a full stop for this GOC. Right. So we have CH double bond CH2, and we have three alpha hydrogens in propene. So what will happen? This is a pi bond. We have a sigma bond and another carbon hydrogen sigma bond will be no, tautomerism will be dealt at the last. After all effects are done, after discussing acidity and basicity altogether, electronic effects combined, tautomerism will be dealt at the last. So we have sigma and pi. These two will enter into conjugation. And what does conjugation means? Delocalization. These pi electrons will be formed, these sigma electrons will form a new pi bond over here, and these pi electrons will be withdrawn by this carbon of the unsaturated system. So our new compound will look something like this: CH, CH2 minus. This was our initial structure, right? And whatever the hydrogen that was losing its electron will be left as H plus, whereas the one which has gained these pi electrons will end up having a lone pair and bears a negative charge. So this will be the hyperconjugated structures. And how many these structures are possible means how many alpha hydrogens are available to us. Those many hyperconjugated structures will be possible. And the more the number of hyperconjugated structures, more will be the electrons involving in the delocalization, so more will be the stability. So till this part we have seen in yesterday's class, and that too, uh, yeah, we have seen applications where the stability of carbocations and carbon free radicals was tertiary greater than secondary, greater than primary, greater than methyl group, be it methyl carbocation or methyl free radical. This was the order. Even though we can explain this order using inductive effect, hyperconjugation will also play like 50-50. Half of the stability can be explained using inductive effect, the other half, or another way of explaining will be due to hyperconjugation. So this was about stability of carbocations. And one more thing we did discuss about the bond length, how this hyperconjugative effect is including or resulting, just like resonance, how the bond lengths are altered in particular hyperconjugation. So let's take the same example as we took propene only. We have initially CH double bond CH2, right? And to this we have 3 alpha hydrogens. And why I am writing separately means because we are specifying what type of bonding that we are having initially. So what do we have here? This is a carbon-carbon single bond. One second. So we have two types of bond here. This is carbon-carbon double bond, and this is carbon-carbon carbon hydrogen single bond. And what do we have? A double bonded bond length will be around 1.33 something picometers we have. Angstrom, sorry, not picometers we have. So now, one second. All right, so Wi-Fi is sir. Sir. Okay. So we were talking about the bond lengths, right? So when we have this hyperconjugation, you can clearly observe there is difference in the type of bonding after the hyperconjugation is done. I mean, after the hydrogens are shifted. So let's say one hydrogen, let's take one simple example, like only one hydrogen involved. So first, let's talk about what happens to a single bond. Now, what do we know in hyperconjugation? Two things will happen. The pi electrons will be delocalized and will end up with a negative charge, whereas the sigma electrons will be lost. And because of that, uh, one second. Seems like Wi-Fi is retrieved. Give me a second. I'll connect. So what is happening here? Initially, there was a single bond between alpha carbon and the unsaturated one, right? So due to hyperconjugation, what is happening to this bond? There will be a partial double bond, right? And the other two hydrogens will be intact. Now, whatever the initial hydrogen that we had, it is lost, and those electrons were forming a pi bond with this initial unsaturated system. And what happened to the initial pi bond? It has converted into a single bond, and the other one is having a negative charge. Now you can see the type of bonding difference here. Initially, there was a carbon-carbon single bond over here, but due to hyperconjugation, it turned out to be a double bond. So this carbon-carbon single bond length, what was it supposed to be? Around 1.54 picometers, angstrom, sorry, something like that. But due to this hyperconjugation, because of formation of this partial double bond, the actual bond length will be around 1.49 something. You can see the sigma bond length was shortened due to double bond formation or partial double bond formation during hyperconjugation. Now, if we look for the another half, initially there was a double bond over here, but due to hyperconjugation, it turned into a single bond. So if it is a carbon-carbon double bond, the expected value will be around 1.33 angstrom something. But in reality, I mean, the actual bond length turned out to be some 1.35, something like that. You can see from double bond to single bond transition is explained for this increase in the bond length. And remember that whenever there was a single bond, because of partial double bond character, it got shortened. If it was a double bond, already it will be smaller when compared to the sigma bond length. But again, because of this single bond transition during hyperconjugated structures, it has turned out to be a sigma bond. And that's why elongation of double bond and shortening of single bonds or sigma bonds will happen because of this hyperconjugation. That's what it means. Two things are happening whenever, like at whatever positions that we have unsaturation here, the decrease in bond length will happen. Why? Because it will form a single bond in the hyperconjugative structure. Whereas wherever we have a single bond initially, due to the shift of electrons, we end up in having a double bond, right? Because of that double bond, sorry, this will be increase in bond length. Wherever we had a double bond, it will be an increase in bond length. If it was a single bond in the first original molecule, when we are writing a structure, since it will form a double bond, it ends up in decreasing the bond length just because of the partial double bond formation while writing the hyperconjugative structures. Just like in resonance, how we had for carbonate ion, all carbon oxygen bonds are equivalent. Why? Because the pi bond can be between any of the oxygens, which means all this bond length are averaged out to intermediate between double bond and a single bond. Even that's the same thing is happening here also. Okay, so this is about bond length, how it is elongated in case of double bond and how it is shortened in case of triple bond, right? And the next application we were talking about was dipole moment. Dipole moment, we all know it will be due to charge development. And now, as you can see, because of this carbon carbon here CH we have, right? As you can see, while writing the hyperconjugative structures, this hydrogen is lost. Initially, we are having a neutral molecule. But after hyperconjugation, we are ending up with a carbon having a negative charge. You can see the charge is appearing while writing the hyperconjugative structures. And because of this reason, there will be a net dipole moment due to this hyperconjugation. If you remember in the resonance part also, there was partial delocalization, not partial, sorry, complete delocalization, and that resulted in complete development of charges, right? Here, also because of the same delocalization, we are ending up at one position, carbon with a negative charge, and that will lead to increase in dipole moment of the molecule. So if we take dipole moment, this dipole moment value, like if you assume, it will be a little bit greater the value than what we have. I mean, neutral molecule you won't expect to be having dipole moment, right? But because of this hyperconjugation, we do end up having greater value. And in the exam, in the book, they took a very beautiful example: acetaldehyde, C double bond O H. Sorry, this is formaldehyde, and acetaldehyde will be CH3 C double bond O H. So in formaldehyde, this is formaldehyde, okay? In formaldehyde, we don't have any alpha carbon, so alpha hydrogens are also absent. But we have polar bond, C double bond is a polar bond, right? Because of that, we have a dipole moment of 2.27 deba unit, something like that. Whereas when we talk about acetaldehyde, since there are alpha hydrogens, these are alpha hydrogens over here. Three alpha hydrogens are available. And because of this, we can write hyperconjugative structure something like this. Oxygen with the three lone pairs, carbon-carbon double bond, hydrogen and hydrogen. The another one will be lost. As you can see in acetaldehyde at alpha position, three hydrogens are available, and because of those three hydrogens, hyperconjugation is observed. And that's the reason why a greater dipole moment around 2.7 deba units is observed when it comes to acetaldehyde, and all that will be due to the presence of alpha hydrogens at this particular acetaldehyde, which was absent in formaldehyde. So that's how dipole moment will be affected due to hyperconjugation. Because of this delocalization of sigma and pi electrons, there will be charge development, and because of that there will be develop increase in the dipole moment of the molecules, right? So this is about dipole moment. Now, okay, this is about dipole moment. Because of hyperconjugation, what will happen? There will be increase in the dipole moment of the molecule, right? Now, coming to the next application, that is orientation of methyl. Okay, I'll wait a second. Do you need me to wait? You can copy this down, or else I'll erase and we can move forward. Regarding the application part, important part actually, that will be a little bit logical, and also, yeah, we will say, right. The next one will be presence of these methyl groups, especially alpha hydrogens of that methyl group, how they are going to affect the reactivity of benzene ring orientation, like how it is going to affect. So we all know this is toluene, right? Benzene with CH3 substituent will be toluene, methyl substituted benzene. When there is hyperconjugation, there is an increase in dipole moment. Yes, there will be increase in dipole moment. I mean, observed value will be greater than what you expect. Definitely, there will be increase in dipole moment. Right. So the next application will be orientation of this methyl group when it is substituted on benzene ring. So because of this, see, benzene ring has a substituent, that is CH3. We can treat this carbon as the alpha carbon, okay? And on this alpha carbon, we have how many alpha hydrogens? Three alpha hydrogens. Even that is also fine. Okay. So we have alpha hydrogens, right? Now, if we further elaborate this structure, we can actually write at what positions this particular hyperconjugation is going to affect. If you remember, this CH3 can be treated as electron donating group, and what type of mesomeric effect? I mean, not literally electron donating, but we do have, whenever we have this kind of substituents, there are two positions where appearance of negative charge will happen. We did wrote resonating structures for phenol, right? In the same manner, we can write here also, wherein we have negative charge at ortho position. How exactly means? Alpha, this is alpha carbon, right? So this hydrogen will be lost, and this carbon carb hydrogen bond will be donated. So this will form a new pi bond over here, and these pi electrons will be withdrawn. So we end up with a structure something like this: carbon carbon hydrogen hydrogen, H plus is lost. So just keep, we'll just omit it for a while. Since the electrons are withdrawn, this red marked one, we have a lone pair. We have a lone pair, negative charge. The other two bonds are not disturbed. So we have ortho position being activated, right? Now there is lone pair in conjugation with a double bond. So this can continue, and we end up having partial charge, this whatever negative charge at para position in the next structure. Carbon, hydrogen, hydrogen, a new pi bond over here. The transition will be something like this. This lone pair over here, and these electrons will be coming over here. So lone pair and a pi bond, and one more hyperconjugative structure we can write. Oh, carbon carbon double bond, hydrogen and hydrogen, new pi bond over here, new pi bond over here, and a negative charge over here. So negative charge over here. As you can see, the ortho and para positions are also activated because of this hyperconjugation, ortho and para. So this effect, hyperconjugative effect, because of this methyl group is more dominant, even if there are a better groups. I mean, the group showing greater magnitude of inductive effect. So this is the only scenario whenever this toluene or the groups having more alpha hydrogens are substituted on benzene, even if they are ranking low in the inductive effect, they are better activating groups at ortho and para, and they lead to substitution at these ortho and para position. First thing. Now, what happens along with this toluene group? One more substituent, I mean, which also shows in benzene. Let me show you that diagram only. It's better rather than scribbling over here. Right, this one. As you can see, because of this inductive effect, we do have charges developed at ortho positions and para positions respectively. Now, when one more substituent is also present on the same benzene ring, just like here, this is isopropyl group and this is tertiary butyl group. And you can see the difference in the number of alpha hydrogens. I mean, we have to concentrate only on the carbon that is attached to our benzene ring, something like this. Here you can see this is alpha hydrocarbon, this is also alpha carbon. There are three alpha hydrogen, whereas in isopropyl group only one alpha hydrogen available. Whereas in the tertiary butyl group substituted on the same toluene, there are zero alpha hydrogens. There are zero alpha hydrogens. But if you remember the inductive effect of these alkyl groups, isopropyl group and tertiary butyl group are better or electron donating rather than alkyl group. Why? Because you can see there are two more alkyl groups on this carbon and three more alkyl groups on this carbon. The overall inductive effect will be more in isopropyl group and tertiary butyl group than it is in methyl group. Now, what do we expect? Since the inductive effect of this tertiary butyl and isopropyl is greater than toluene, with respect to this, there should be any substituent. Why? Because if you check the previous structures, you can see the ortho and para positions are ending up with a negative charge. They provide a way for any substitution at this position. So we might think that there should be something substituted at this position. But in reality, what will happen is instead of substituting to in ortho position with respect to this group, I'll mark the red color positions over here, here, and here. This is the expected substitution, but in reality, it will go in the marked one, blue colored one, it will be, which means methyl group, because of presence of three alpha hydrogens, shows greater hyperconjugative effect. Because of that, the ortho positions with respect to methyl groups are more activated than these isopropyl or tertiary butyl groups. And that's the reason why, if at all any substitution happens, they will happen with respect to with respect to methyl group, that too at ortho positions most preferably, because already at para we have another substituent. So this is the only scenario where hyperconjugative is dominant or like works in a different way than what it did in inductive effect. So that's how much big deal this hyperconjugation is. It is activating, and that too everything is revolving around the presence of alpha hydrogens and how many of those are present. Greater is the alpha hydrogens, more will be the hyperconjugative effect, more will be the stability, and all those factors just make sense. Okay, so this is about hyperconjugation. So whenever any molecule is given, if there is any unsaturation like carbon carbon double bond, or carbon with a double bond and carbon with a triple bond, and any carbocation or carbanion or carbon with the free radicals, to these groups, the adjacent carbon, that is simply alpha position, if we have hydrogen substituted on that carbon, then it will be showing hyperconjugative effect. So this is about hyperconjugative effect, and things will be very simple in hyperconjugative effect. The type of questions that will be asked is whether they will show hyperconjugative effect or not, or partly they will combine and they might ask regarding the shortening or bond dipole moment point of view also they might ask, but mostly it will be very very basic when it comes to hyperconjugation, that is whether it is possible or not. Okay, now, okay, it's acha, fine. So this is about hyperconjugation. Now let's talk about aromaticity. What is aromaticity? If you remember, 1 second, when we were talking GOC, while dealing with GOC, classification of organic compound, aromatic and aliphatic. Aromatic compounds are what they have characteristic smell and they have delocalizing pi electrons, most of them. So here we will talk in details how exactly a molecule, like if they give you any random structure, how can we find out whether it is aromatic compound or not. So keep the next heading aromaticity, non-aromaticity, and anti-aromaticity. Three terms are there. All of them, even though in books they give very elaborate, only very simple logic is there in order to understand that. So let's start. Aromaticity. Aromaticity we have. Second one will be anti-aromaticity. anti-aromaticity, and the third one will be non-aromatic. Okay, let me write in terms of aromatic. Aromatic, anti-aromatic, and non-aromatic. Okay. So when it comes to aromatic compound, the basic and the first thing that we should check is Huckel's rule. This is very important. You will come across regarding this rule more in organic chemistry. So make a note. So what exactly is this Huckel's rule? Huckel's rules, this one talks about resonance, or simply let us generalize delocalization. And if you remember in resonance, this delocalization was due to pi electrons or lone pairs, something like that. In this particular Huckel's rule, they specifically mention if there are 4n plus 2 pi electrons, means total of 4n plus 2 pi electrons should be available in that molecule. 4n plus 2 pi electrons itself. We are not counting lone pairs also. When there are 4n plus 2 pi electrons and all of them are in complete delocalization. All of them are in complete delocalization. What do we mean by delocalization? The shifting or transfer of electrons. If we take benzene ring, the best example, let's start with the benzene ring and try to understand how exactly this Huckel rules works. So if this is benzene ring, we will be having three alternate pi bonds, right? And you can count there are 6 pi electrons. Now by counting the pi bonds, we wrote 6 pi electrons. That's fine. Now we have to check whether this is satisfying the rule, that is 4n plus 2 pi electrons. And it is satisfying. If you can see, we can write it as 4 into 1 plus 2. So our integer being 1. And here n will take starting with 0, 1, 2, 3. It will take all integers only. When we have this 4n plus 2 pi electrons, and that too, all of them should involve in delocalization. Delocalization means shifting of pi electrons from one place to another, resulting in a conjugated system. And we do know that these pi electrons can delocalize here, this over here, and this over here, and we end up in a double bonds in different positions. So as long as that particular compound have 4n plus 2 pi electrons, blindly we can mark it as aromatic compound. Okay, this part is simple. As long as we have 4n plus 2 pi electrons, and that too all the pi electrons are involved in delocalization, I mean are involved in resonance or in conjugation, then we can talk about, then we can say that compound as aromatic. The best example is benzene. If we can write in a different position all these pi electrons, right? And we will be writing the resonance hybrid, something like this. We will be indicating a dotted line to indicate that the pi bonds are not fixed. Instead, they are delocalized and they can be anywhere between any two carbons at any instant. That's what resonance hybrid is. So aromatic compound rule is very simple. As long as you have 4n plus 2 pi electrons, and if all of them are involved in delocalization throughout the molecule, then we can call it as aromatic compound. Now, since we did shorted out important line that is regarding pi electrons, there is one more point that we have to understand when we are talking about aromatic compounds. Why? Because mostly it will be for unsaturated systems, because that's how we end up with pi electrons. Along with that, we should have one more criteria. Should be and also it should be planar, it should not have any non-planar conformations. I mean, let's say we have some seven, not seven, seven, eight, some 10 numbered 10 carbon ring without any, even if you have pi electrons, it won't be a planar molecule. So as long as you have a planar molecule and that too a cyclic compound and having these 4n plus 2 pi electrons in complete delocalization, or let's say very conjugation throughout the molecule, then we can call it as aromatic compound. So this is what about aromatic. So let's see one simple example. You will try to understand. Conjugation. This complete delocalization means throughout the molecules, this pi electron should be shifted. Okay, if that's not happening, then we cannot call it as aromatic compound. So let's take a simple example, ma, and we will try to understand more about this. Hexane is not planar. Then benzene, how is it aromatic? Hexane, right? This is tricyclo. Sorry, triene. Benzene is triene, and that too there is complete delocalization. Okay. If you remember the pi bonds, whatever they are forming, they will be between the pure atomic orbitals. Yes or no? And now, since okay, I think we should talk about this. All the six carbons pi electrons will be or pi orbitals involved. That is the original p orbitals, pure atomic orbitals. They will be in the same plane. I think I will explain using a better structure. Now it's not possible, but yeah, benzene, even if it is cyclohexane, is not having a planar conformation, but we do have planar one. Yeah, definitely. I'll erase and I'll, yeah. See, yeah, I actually regarding the planar benzene and all, what will happen is let me show you. So this is six carbon ring, right? And if you remember, all the six electrons, all the six carbons, due to resonance, have a partial double bond. That's what benzene is. Now, in reality, I mean, in order to justify this, how they will do is that whatever the p orbitals that are involved on each carbon for this pi bond formation, they will be aligned in such a way that all the sigma bonded carbons will be in one plane. Then whatever the delocalization that is resulting in a partial pi bond or partial, like, yeah, because of this delocalization, it will be something like all the orbitals are involved. All the orbitals of each carbon, all six carbons p orbitals will be involved. That's why benzene turns out to be a planar one, because only sigma bond, this is simple sp2 hybridized, right? This is simple sp2 hybridized carbon without any doubt. Whereas in cyclohexane we had two more hydrogens, which was sp3. That's why it was more about non-planar configuration. But when it comes to benzene, all the carbons are sp2 hybridized, and at each carbon you have one p pure atomic p orbital involved in pi bond formation. So when we are trying to justify this partial double bond or this delocalization of pi bond, we will say yes, all the carbons in benzene, we try to see how many sigma bonds are there. So each position we have C6, H6, right? Benzene. In each position we have hydrogen, yes or no? So in each carbon is having only 3 sigma and 1 pi. And this 3 sigma will indicate the hybridization of benzene as sp2 hybridization. That's why all these lie in one plane, and the pi orbitals will be perpendicular to that plane, something like this, and the pi electron cloud, whatever this delocalization is happening, will be above one below. That's why aromaticity is applicable or is observed in benzene. Cyclohexane is sp3 hybridized. That's why, because of the electronic repulsions, carbon carbon are between electron clouds and all, we end up having chair and boat forms. Excuse me. Here we have sp2 hybridized carbon. So on that too, there is complete delocalization happening. So benzene will be a planar and a proper and a better aromatic compound following the Huckel's rule without any doubt. Okay, so let's take one more example whether to find out aromatic compound or not. So propenyl. So this is cyclopropenyl carbocation because we have a positive charge on the carbon, right? Cyclopropenyl carbocation. First thing is we all know till cyclopropane, cyclobutane, and cyclopropane and butane. Till that we have planar. Starting with cyclopentane, we have envelope kind of non-planar conformations, and that too. After that, there will be some ring strain. That and all we have covered. But now let's talk only about this propene. That too, cyclopropenyl with a positive charge on one of the carbons. This will be without any doubt it will be a planar molecule. Even if its alkane form is planar, its alkenyl form also will be planar only. And if you see, there is a conjugative system also, a pi bond, sigma bond, and in alternate position we have this particular positive charge. Now, if we try to write the delocalization of this, what will happen? These pi electrons, whatever we have here, they can be shifted over here. Because of that, a new pi bond, since this is losing the electrons, it will end up having a positive charge. So this is the structure one. Now in the next scenario, it can go something like this. This will form a new pi bond over here, and this carbon will be losing its share. And we have third structure something like this. Positive charge over here and a new pi bond over here. You can see all the carbons in the ring are involving in the delocalization, or to keep it easier, the pi electrons are delocalizing throughout the molecule. So along with this molecule being planar, we have complete delocalization. Complete delocalization. And let's talk about the pi electrons. This is the important part. How many pi electrons are there? There are only two electrons, which means we can write it as 4 into 0 plus 2, where n being 0. This is also acceptable integer, right? Which means Huckel's rule is also tick. I mean, it is also satisfying. There is it is satisfying Huckel's rule. It is planar, and these pi electrons are all in pi electron, and the positive charge are in conjugation, and that too these pi electrons are in delocalization throughout the molecule. Because of that, the cyclopropenyl carbocation is aromatic. Because of this, it will be aromatic. Now as you can see, structure number 1, structure number 2, structure number 3. If there is conjugation, simply we can name all these three together are resonance, right? Resonating structures. So the resulting resonance hybrid will be something like this. Throughout you have a circle we can draw with a positive charge, and this circle indicates there is throughout the molecule these pi electrons are being delocalized, and a positive a symbol in the circle indicates this positive charge is also being delocalized throughout the molecule along with the pi electrons. So what are the things that we need to check whether the compound is aromatic or not? First thing is how many pi electrons are available. How many pi electrons are available, whether they are following Huckel's rule or not. After finding out if they are following Huckel's rule, try to write the resonance structures. If we end up having complete resonance or complete delocalization throughout the molecule, then we can say that molecule as aromatic compound. There are cases, even if Huckel's rule is satisfied, the molecule being non-planar, it is not aromatic. Okay, it behaves as some other thing. Those things will be most commonly seen in a term called annulins or annulins, they say. That also we will see. But as of now, let's try to get the basics straight. That is, on what basis can we say a particular molecule is aromatic or not? So, in order to define aromatic compound, the first thing that we have to see is 4n plus 2 pi electrons, whether they are available or not. That is Huckel's rule. Second thing is whether there is complete delocalization. Complete delocalization. So these are the two important points. Planar, non-planar and all, we can figure it out as a solve example, but these two should be checked. Why? Because the next term, non-aromatic, will be somewhat near to this, but small difference only will be there. In order to know that, we should get the aromatic rule straight. As long as we have 4n plus 2 pi electrons and all these pi electrons are involved in delocalization, then we can say that particular compound as aromatic. Now, what exactly is anti-aromatic? Anti-aromatic. Only difference is the number of pi electrons, okay? Nothing more than that. When it comes to anti-aromatic, we have 4n pi electrons instead of 4n plus 2 pi electrons. So we have 4n pi electrons and the n can be 0, 1, 2, 3 and so on. And here also one more important thing, whatever pi electrons that we have, even they should be in complete delocalization. Complete delocalization. So 4n plus 2 pi electrons along with complete delocalization, we call it as aromatic. Only 4n electrons along with complete delocalization of them again, we call it as anti-aromatic. So that's the only difference, the number of pi electrons between aromatic and anti-aromatic. We have to see a lot of examples on this. We will see, since we are talking about definition, here only we will talk about non-aromatic also. Non-aromatic. In non-aromatic, there won't, both the pi electrons, whatever, even if you have any pi electrons, they won't satisfy either Huckel's rules or 4n pi electrons. And the best part is there won't be delocalization at all. Whatever pi electrons that we end up, they won't be in delocalization. No complete delocalization, which means the shifting of transferring of electrons will not happen throughout the molecule. We have to see a lot of example. Okay, just forget about non-aromatic, concentrate on aromatic and anti-aromatic. I will share some more examples for this. Okay, you can solve them. Tomorrow we will see more examples for anti-aromatic, non-aromatic, and then we will talk about acidic strength and basic strength. I think in by the end of the week we can properly finish off this particular chapter, including tautomerism. So freshly on Monday, even in online session, we can start a alkanes chapter. Okay, so today's class was a little mess. Sorry for that, because I'm just it took time for me to connect to Wi-Fi and all. And even if I did, the strength was not sufficient in the room I was sitting. So tomorrow I'll come early and sort this out. It won't happen tomorrow. So yeah, that is one thing. What if there is delocalization but it is not planar? Is it non-aromatic? Even for, yeah, you can say it can be non-aromatic. There is actually, which stabilizes the compound here, resonance or hyperconjugation? Resonance only. Hyperconjugation is done. In this aromatic and anti-aromatic, resonance will be giving more stability than hyperconjugation. Always resonance is higher. There is delocalization, but it is not planar. Is it non-aromatic? Acha. If you are looking at that way, mm, we can say, yeah, it can be no, yeah, it will be non-aromatic only. The criteria is it should be cyclic, it should be planar. definitely, if it's not satisfied even if we have alternate double bonds and our complete delocalization. If it is not planar, then it will be non-aromatic only. And in general, acha, in general also resonance effect is more mostly in almost all compounds. If there is resonance, it will be dominated by, like, it will be dominating other groups, like that. How can we solve questions related to basic nature of aniline and acidic? Yeah, that and all we have to do. Anyway, we when we were discussing about these acidic strengths and all, regarding at that point, whatever the knowledge we had, we try to confining to only single electronic effect. We try to define acidic strength and basic strength. Since we did discuss about all the electronic effects, when we are dealing again, we have to combine all together. Priority order, I will give you the priority order, okay? And based on that priority order we can solve questions. Priority order, I'll give priority order, that will be easy, then only we can solve. Otherwise we will be having a notion, like we can't move forward if we don't know which is dominating, which is least effective. As of now we know one thing: mesomeric effect is more important than inductive effect, and in some cases inductive effect is more dominant than mesomeric effect, just like we had in halogens. So like that, there are some exceptional cases. When we put all them together, we'll have one page kind of thing, which will be helpful when solving those sets of examples. And yeah, today I couldn't check in today who are all attended today's class. I came at 12:30 to campus, so I couldn't check the students how many were present. I think I saw only the four same people who came yesterday. Are they present today? Saket and all. Saket, Aditya, Kaushik, and one more guy. Kaushik, Aditya, Saket, and Vardhan. Only four people attended yesterday. I think only they four only. I think I saw them, but I'm not sure. I'll check in and I'll let you know who are all attended today again. I think more of you are coming tomorrow. I think
No.
Nimesh is coming tomorrow, I guess. I heard from Janardhan sir. Yes, Satvik.
Ma'am,
Yes, Satvik.
ma'am, do we have exam this week?
Do we have quiz?
Exam
No,
this week?
no. As of now, nothing is planned, ma. No exam.
Okay.
Probably it's no, because offline is going in different track and online we are doing in different track, right? It will be difficult people to manage both of them at same time. I don't think they'll conduct. It's already Tuesday, right? I should get info, but I didn't get any. It will be no exam only. No exam. We can
Okay.
relax. Right. Yeah, and one more thing, tomorrow we will see more examples. Network issue will be sorted out, and we will see from there where it will goes. Probably we can wind it up by Saturday, and we will also start alkenes by next Monday. What did Satvik did search start in Kukatpalli branch alkenes, or was he revising the same acidic strength of phenols? Or
No, ma'am. He started basicity and then I think tomorrow or day after tomorrow, sir said he's gonna start hydrocarbon.
acha, then fine, no problem. We'll get there to day after tomorrow. It's okay. It's okay. Chalo. That will be for today, Ma. We'll meet tomorrow. I'll share these notes regarding aromatic, anti-aromatic with examples. Actually, I have Singage book. I think I'll share the snaps from here only. They gave it very clearly. You can follow it. Chalo. We'll meet tomorrow, Ma. Take care. Okay, man. Before I go, I think how many of you are coming tomorrow newly to campus? I heard Nimesh is coming tomorrow. I don't know about others. I do heard one thing that many of you are not at all into offline classes. Even that's also fine. Okay, it's okay.
I'm sharing the screen. Yesterday we were discussing about the collinear vectors. Okay. On this date, we had discussed about collinear points, collinear vectors. And in that theorem one, we had discussed about if A bar and B bar are collinear, then A bar is equal to lambda B bar. Lambda is a scalar. And in theorem 2, we had discussed that if A bar and B bar are collinear vectors, then there exist scalars x and y such that xa plus yb equal to 0, x comma y not all 0, not both 0 at the same time. Okay. And the third theorem we had discussed was if A bar and B bar are not collinear and if we write xa plus yb equal to 0, then x and y both should be 0. And then we had taken a note if A bar, B bar are collinear, they are linearly dependent, right? And the second point, now you write this note today. What is the date? 02/2021. Okay. Now you note down this note. If A bar, B bar are not collinear, then they are linearly independent. That is, xa plus yb equal to 0 implies x equal to y equal to 0. Okay, they are called linearly dependent. If x and y are such scalars in which at least one of them is not 0, then they will be linearly dependent. Here they are linearly independent. Okay, these are the things which we had discussed yesterday. Okay, now we will go to the next theorem. Theorem 4. It is all about condition. For 3 points to be collinear. As we know that a point in geometry is similar to a position vector of the point in vector, okay? Particularly in vectors, we consider them as the position vectors with respect to origin. If I'm going to write here, if A, B, C are 3 points whose position vectors are A bar, B bar, C bar, respectively. Then there will be collinear if xa plus yb plus zc equal to null vector such that x plus y plus z equal to 0 and x, y, z are not all 0 at the same time. That is, at least one of the scalar is not 0 at a given time. This is the theorem 4. Proof. Therefore, there are 3 points which are collinear. Okay. And their position vectors are A bar, B bar, C bar means OA bar is A bar, OB bar is B bar, OC bar is C bar. Now, first approach of proof. Since A, B, C points A, B, C are collinear, therefore, vectors AB and AC are also collinear, correct? If one vector is collinear with another vector, then one vector can be written as lambda times another vector, theorem 1. AB is position vector of B minus position vector of A, vector AB. And vector AC